Did you know that roughly 98% of your body's atoms are replaced every year, making you physically different than you were a year ago? So, all of the issues and all of the problems you went through last year, all of the bad decisions you made, they are someone else. That was not me. That was someone else. Welcome, everyone. This is the Golden Parallel, where we discuss the stories, trends, and financial insights shaping our world. Join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as we explore news and markets across North America, Europe, and Asia. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the political crisis happening in Germany, as well as the escalation of the Ukraine-Russian war and how that is impacting the local and global economy. Now, this is a very important two topics. They definitely do not get enough recognition, or the type of viewing angle, I would say, that we're going to talk about today is not brought up enough. But first, before we get to that, we need to go over our weekly European headlines, everybody's favorite segment. Woo! Europe is facing another energy crisis due to rapidly depleting gas reserves and potential supply cuts from Russia. The situation mirrors the 2022 energy crisis, where the EU purchased gas at any price. So one thing that's not known enough is that Europe purchases a lot of energy from Russia. And you can see right there as how that's pretty dangerous, right? If you get a lot of your energy from Russia, Russia can just flip that switch off and skyrocket your energy prices. We're going to talk about this later in the video today in our first segment. Both the US and the UK gave permission to Ukraine to offensively use Allied supplying long-range missiles and weapons, targeting and striking places within Russia. So actually, their missiles were hitting targets, in Russia. This marks a significant escalation of the conflict. Russia responded by firing off a new hypersonic ballistic missile at the Ukrainian city of Dnipro. Funny enough, this missile was named Oreshnik, or the Hazel. I'm not really sure if they're trying to strike fear into Ukrainians, but I'm not sure if the Hazel is doing it for me. Damage was found at two major data cables that run nearly 750 miles, or 1,200 kilometers from Finland's capital Helsinki to the German port city of Rostock. Another cable between Lithuania and Sweden was also damaged. Germany's defense minister stated that this was an act of sabotage. Now, these cables are like deep down under the water, right? So you need some quite heavy, sophisticated machinery and tools to even get down there, right? Let alone crack these giant, thick cables that transfer the internet over land masses. French stocks plunged on Wednesday. Investors are dumping French assets amid concerns about political instability. Michel Barnier, the Prime Minister of France, is running a minority government right now following President Emmanuel Macron's unsuccessful bid to boost his authority with a snap election earlier this year, meaning the administration is highly vulnerable to a rebellion. So this is also in connection with the energy prices skyrocketing in Europe because of Russia. Political instability comes out of that economic instability. We're going to talk about this as well a little bit in our Germany segment. Germany's governing coalition of three parties has broken down after disagreements over the country's weak economy, which has led Chancellor Olaf Scholz to sack his finance minister. Scholz told Parliament that he would submit a request for a vote of confidence on December 16th of this year. Scholz is expected to lose that vote of confidence, which will then set Germany on a path for snap elections in a little over 100 days from now on February 23rd of 2025. So those were the big headlines today in Europe. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break and then stick with us to hear about the political crisis happening in Germany and how that is relating to the economic woes the entire continent is feeling. Welcome back. So there is a political crisis happening in Germany, and it's quite underreported here in America. Actually, most of Europe's politics besides Ukraine are going quite underreported here in America. And to talk about this issue, we need some important context. So in 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, many of the Western European powers supported Ukraine. They gave Ukraine, military equipment, or they gave them financial aid. And this really pissed off Russia. Now, Europe, right, Western Europe in particular, the far western side, gets a lot of its energy from Russia. So Germany, for instance, gets about 50% of its natural gas and more than 40% of its oil from Russia. So you can see where that becomes quite dangerous, right? Because Russia has the power to flip a switch and just cut Germany and France. France gets a lot too from Russia off, and then their energy prices skyrocket. And when energy prices skyrocket, so does the cost to produce food or to produce any type of manufactured good, like a car. Like Germany has a giant manufacturing industry. When energy prices are really high, it costs a lot of money to produce those goods. So their economy really wanes and woes. Now, Germany is actually the largest contributor to the European Union. And that is an issue because when Germany is struggling, all of Europe is struggling. So, Germany in Q3 of 2024 had a meager growth rate of about 0.2%. That's far behind the US at about 2.8%. Similarly, France is also seeing that. One thing that's interesting with France is that their government bond yields are surpassing those of Spain and Greece for the first time since 2007. So, what that means is that the return rate you get on your bond is higher, right? And that means it is also riskier. So, usually we can think about this is that the interest rate, when it's higher, that means that there is a higher risk that it will not pay back, or it is a higher perceived risk that it will not pay back. Now, Spain and Greece are not contributors to the EU budget. They take more than they give. And France is the second largest contributor. So when the second largest contributor to the EU budget is seeing really, really high bond yields, it means there is a lot of political and economic instability in that country. And so if there's a lot of political and economic instability in both Germany and France, it means all of Europe is experiencing that. So Europe is in a really, really shaky time right now. And they kind of walked right into it. They got reliant on Russian energy. It was obvious in Trump's first term. Trump actually called this out when he met with the European Union. He said, "You guys are stuck on Russian energy, and that is going to be your downfall." He told them that. He told them to not do this. They didn't listen to him, and now here they are. What's interesting here about Germany is that there's actually a lot of political parties trying to vie for power. So, Chancellor Olaf Scholz sacked his finance minister. Why is that important? Germany has a coalition of three parties that govern the country right now. They have a majority in the parliament. So, when those three parties decide to make a decision together, it passes, right? But if that coalition were to break, then nothing can work. And that's what that did. That's what sacking that finance minister did. So Olaf Scholz is part of the CDU. His finance minister was a part of a different party. When he sacked that finance minister, it broke the coalition, effectively just destroying the governing body of Germany. And when that happened, Scholz requested a vote of confidence on December 16th. That will most certainly fail, by the way. And then what we're going to see is snap elections on February 23rd in Germany. So the economic instability from Russia increasing energy prices in Germany has led to political instability, which has led to which is going to lead, hasn't been decided yet, but it almost certainly will lead to snap elections. And what we're going to see is a new governing body in Germany next year. Now, the problem here is that it doesn't really matter what government takes place. Well, that's not true. It does matter, right? The government can do a lot of things. But the real issue on why there's a political crisis and why there's an economic crisis is because Russia won't give Germany cheap energy. So even if you were to get a political party in there that says a bunch of wild things that they want to reform and change to fix the economy, it's not going to work. It's simply not going to work because the issue on why Germany's economy is stuttering is because of that high energy prices from Russia. So the only real ways you can fix this is to one, kiss and make up with Russia, which they're not going to do because all the countries around them are going to see that as a hostile attack, right? You're siding with Russia? You were siding with us. Why are you siding with Russia? They're an autocratic, authoritarian state. So they can't do that. Germany can't do that. The other option that they can do is do clean green energy, but that is not what they want to do. And so, what's interesting about this election that's going to come up is that there is a rise of a new party called the AfD, or the Alternative for Germany. And it's polling currently in second place nationally and is running on, similar populist ideals as Donald Trump, except they are a little bit different. It's the same kind of vibe, though, in terms of political campaign. So the AfD wants to do something quite radical, and that's push for a referendum in Germany, which has not been done, by the way, since 1938. And I think we all know what happened in 1938. So this referendum is pretty comprehensive. I'm not going to really get into it, but there is a link in the description of this video if you want to read about that referendum and what the AfD wants to do in Germany. So the primary thing, though, that they want to do is leave the EU, which, in my opinion, is kind of crazy, right? Some other things they want to do are populist ideas, similar to what Donald Trump wants to do. Now, the problem I have with this is that an entire referendum to Germany's government, or any radical idea, as I said previously, is not going to fix their economic problems. Their economic problems stem from high energy prices from Russia. So like I said, the only real way to fix this is to get cheap energy again. If you leave the EU, or if you reform your entire government, it's not going to do anything. It's your problems aren't going anywhere. And one thing that everyone should know about politics and about democracy is that when people have economic hardship, when they have economic instability, when they don't have money in their pocket to feed their kids or heat their house, democracy goes out the window. It's something they just won't care about. I have to feed my kid. They're going to starve, right? So that's what we're seeing in Germany. When you have that political instability based on economic instability, your democratic process and values can very easily fall to the wayside. And, it's really sad to see. It is really sad to see. And this is a story that we're going to keep up on, and we're going to come back to when Germany has that vote of confidence and that re-election. And we'll see what Germany decides to do. I really hope they decide to vote in a party that wants to do green, clean energy, because that's the only solution that I can see outside of becoming a buddy-buddy with Russia to fix their economic issues. But yeah, we'll see where that takes us. We'll cover that story again here in the following weeks. But that's going to be it for the German side today. Stick with us to hear our conversation on the recent escalation of the Ukraine-Russian war and what the impact on economics could be in the near future. Welcome back. The Ukraine-Russian war is almost in its 34th month, so we're closing in on 3 years of war. Since the later half of 2023, the war is mostly stagnated as both sides have dug in. Ukraine at this point is fully mobilized. So what that means is that their economy is not producing consumer goods anymore. They're producing entirely military goods. Any factory that really remains in Ukraine is producing ammunition or, artillery or, warships, all military goods. They're not producing any consumer goods anymore, which is how they should be, right? That's what you want to be. If you're going to a war, you want to be fully mobilized. Now, an interesting thing is that Ukraine, as of August 2024, has received over $200 billion in allocated aid, and that has really stimulated their economy, right? Because they're not producing consumer goods. They need allocated aid from the outside to balance out their economy. And that aid is really coming entirely from Europe and the US. The most recent major event has been Ukraine's offensive push into the Kursk region, which is on the northeastern side of Ukraine. Ukraine has lost 40% of its territory in that region due to Russian counter-assaults. So, how is this war affecting the global economy, and what could the future hold after the war is done? The primary effect, as I covered in the previous section, has been the rise in energy prices, and then trickling from that, food insecurity, the rise of food prices, and the rise of manufacturing costs in Europe, and the reduction of the European economy and the rise of political instability. Evidence from the stock market reveals that firms here in America with strong ties to Russia through trade or ownership experienced a substantial fall in share prices following the invasion. So that's how it's affecting here. Now, across the world, on average, trade links with Russia caused a 1.5% drop in the value of every country's aggregated stock market index. So the world is entirely, in its entirety, is being affected by this war. According to the Office of the United States Trade Representative, the goods export to European Union in 2022 were $351 billion. Now, the reason why I said this last one was because we are seeing a really, really strong economic downturn in Europe. And this is important because Europe is one of the highest, most advanced consumer economies in the entire world. And so when Europe cannot buy a lot of goods and services from the United States or other economies in the world, it affects the whole global economy. It turns everything downward. And that's what we're going to see as this war continues on. Russia, in my opinion, is going to continue to squeeze energy in Europe and raise those prices. That's going to lead to less goods and services being bought in Europe because people will have less money because they have to spend more on energy and food and all of the stuff that rises in price, when energy prices rise. And then that's going to affect the US. It's going to affect China because they're not going to be able to sell as many goods to Europe. Now, let's talk about what might happen after the war ends. And this is where, in my opinion, it gets real interesting. So, Donald Trump wants to raise tariffs on Europe. And that is another giant, brick wall that Europe's going to have to face here in the near future. Trump also wants to pull out of Ukraine, right? And let Ukraine either one, get capitulated by Russia, or two, sign a peace deal and, essentially give away some of Ukraine and make Ukraine a puppet state of Russia. That is bad. That is really bad because Europe is going to respond to this. Europe's not going to like Trump's actions here, and they're definitely going to try and start a trade war. And we're going to see a reduction in the global economy. Now, one interesting side to this is that China could come out of this a huge winner. Once the Ukraine war ends, and which I will think won't actually be too far from now, and Trump puts tariffs on Europe, and Europe responds, China could come in and be like, yo, Europe, we chill, bro. No tariffs from our end. Hey, no tariffs, no tariffs. We could big trade partners. We could be chill. And Europe might be okay with that. Europe might accept that and kind of push out the United States. And so this is one of the primary reasons why I think tariffs are a terrible idea, let alone their impact on our own economy. They're going to isolate America from the rest of the world. They're going to make everyone be resentful of us, and that's not good, right? We do not want to be the ones that are isolated. We want to be the ones who are a part of the world economy. Russia right now is isolated because of their invasion of Ukraine. They have very few trade partners. It's really like North Korea, Iran, and China. It's like China's the only one that's beneficial, but you're trading with North Korea and Iran. Like, that's not a great sign, right? And the US might be in similar positions, not trading with those countries, but in similar positions where we have few allies to rely on, and the rest of the world will squeeze our economy. So the end of this Ukraine-Russian war is very, very important for the future of the global economy. And if the United States is not careful, we are going to see a huge reduction in our own trade exports and imports. So we got to be real careful here. Now, the last thing I wanted to touch on here is that there is a possibility that Ukraine can get favorable terms and win this war. The problem with that, even if Ukraine gets favorable terms and able to stave off a lot of the Russian aggression and win, in quotation marks, the war, Russia is going to be very, very hateful towards Europe for that. And they're going to clamp down on energy prices and maybe not even sell energy to Europe. And we're going to see Europe just collapse into more economic and political instability. And so the outcomes here are dangerous, very dangerous. To me, it feels like there's almost no winning path forward here. The one way we could go, the United States could go, that could be half decent, is if we have Trump get a decent peace deal in Ukraine. That goes through. He's able to deflate tensions between Europe and Russia, or Europe and America as well. He doesn't put up tariffs, and everything kind of cools down, and we can get into a point where there's low instability, and that is very conductive for economic growth. That would be the best option here. The other side, if Trump decides to say, screw Ukraine, stops helping Ukraine, puts up tariffs on Europe, and then antagonizes Russia, I mean, we are going to see just a blow up of world tensions and a huge decline in the world economy. So those are kind of the two sides to this. I hope it's the first and not the latter, but we're going to have to see how that goes. And so that's it for today. We're going to continue to cover the Ukraine-Russia war. I know this one was a little bit all over the place, and that's because it's kind of hard to talk about Ukraine in terms of an economic, like global economic sense. There's a lot that still needs to be figured out. The big takeaways here are that Russia is raising energy prices on Europe because Europe supports Ukraine, and that is causing political instability in Europe. And then on top of that, you have the tariffs that Trump wants to put into place, causing more instability on the global stage. Thank you for watching The Golden Parallel. We post new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Subscribe to stay in the loop and comment below on what you thought about today's topic. We'll see you next time.